Put your tray down. You people don't just wander into rooms like this and pretend you belong. The dining manager said it loud enough that 3 tables stopped talking. She had one gloved hand on the girl's tray, and she was already pulling it back, the way you take something away from a child who grabbed it without asking. The girl held on for half a second, then let go. On the steel counter between them sat a plate of chicken and rice going cold under the heat lamps. "I've paid for my meal plan," the girl said. "Full plan. It's on my account." The woman smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Honey, people like you don't pay for the full anything. Your card gets flagged for a reason. There's a line for that. It's in the back. The Annex. You know where that is." The girl did not cry. She set her jaw and looked straight ahead at a spot on the wall, the way you look at something when you refuse to let a room watch your face fall apart. Behind her, near the doors, a man had stopped walking. He was holding a visitor badge in one hand, and he did not move it. He did not move anything. His name was Marcus Bellamy, and the girl at the counter was his daughter, and the woman who had just told her she didn't belong had no idea that the next 90 minutes would cost her everything she had spent 16 years building. Before I tell you what he did, quick thing. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from, and have you ever kept quiet about something like this because speaking up felt more dangerous than swallowing it? Now, who was this man? Marcus Bellamy grew up on the north side of Philadelphia, in a block of row houses where the summer heat sat on your chest at night and never let go. His father drove a delivery truck. His mother took in laundry and cleaned 2 offices downtown after dark. Between them, they never cleared $40,000 in a single year, and Marcus knew the exact number because his mother kept it written in a spiral notebook she balanced at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee she reheated 3 times. He had a younger sister named Nia. She was the loud one. She played a little brass harmonica their uncle had given her, badly, constantly, until their mother threatened to bury it in the yard. Nia had a heart condition the free clinic kept telling them to keep an eye on. "Keep her cool," they said. "Keep her calm." The August Marcus was 14, the power went out on their block. A heat wave had cooked the city for a week, and the grid gave out, and the crews came, and the crews fixed the neighborhoods with the nicer addresses first. Their block waited. 1 day, 2 days, 6 days in the dark with the windows open and wet towels on the back of the neck and no way to keep anybody cool. Nia died on the 5th night. She was 12. Marcus stood on the front steps at 3 in the morning and watched a repair truck finally turn onto their street, its yellow lights spinning, 40 hours too late, and he asked himself a question that never once left him after that. Why does the light always come back last for people like us? He answered it with his whole life. Scholarship to Drexel. Nights loading trucks to cover the rest. A degree in electrical engineering, then years as the only black man on the floor, everyone waiting politely for him to fail. He learned to keep his voice flat in those rooms, and that the calmest person at the table is usually the one who wins. In a rented equipment bay outside Chester, Pennsylvania, with a folding table and one idea, he started building batteries, cheap, tough, neighborhood scale, power that stays on when the grid quits, for the blocks that always get restored last. That bay became Meridian Grid Technologies, worth north of $5.5 billion now, its systems keeping the lights on in clinics and shelters and 1,100 schools. He built all of it around a question a 14-year-old asked on his front steps. 3 years ago, his wife Camille was killed. She taught 10th grade biology. A man ran a red light on Abercorn while she drove home from a parent conference, and she was gone before the ambulance turned the corner. Marcus couldn't stay in the house after that. He sold it and moved to Savannah with their daughter, closer to nothing that reminded him of her keys in the door. Zora, 19 now. She'd gotten into Ellsworth on her own, a near-perfect entrance score, a paper on cooling red-lined neighborhoods published before she finished high school. She was studying environmental engineering, the exact thing that killed her aunt, and she'd never told a single person on campus who her father was. She'd made him promise. No foundation, no donor dinners, no last name doing the work for her. Meridian was quietly in talks with Ellsworth about a $9.5 million lab named for Camille, and Zora wanted none of it attached to her. She wanted to know she'd earned her seat with nothing but her own name on it. So when Diane Merrick started pulling her tray the first week, Zora said nothing. When it happened again, she said nothing. She told herself reporting it would only prove she couldn't handle a little friction. She told herself the billionaire's daughter complaining about lunch would be a joke people repeated. So she carried it alone and never told her father. And that is how a good man ends up in a doorway learning about his own child's pain from a stranger's mouth. That Tuesday, Marcus had flown into Savannah before dawn. Meridian's counsel had come with him. By 9, he was in a conference room on the top floor of the administration building, shaking hands with the university's leadership, listening to them praise the renderings of the lab. Everyone smiled. Everyone agreed the partnership was going to be historic. At noon, the group broke for lunch, and the administrators headed for the faculty dining room with its cloth napkins and its salmon. Marcus said he needed some air. That was half true. The whole truth was that he hadn't seen his daughter in a month, and he missed her so much it sat in his chest like a stone. He wanted to surprise her, sit across from her with a plastic tray and ask about her classes like any other father. So he took the stairs down, followed the signs to the student dining hall, pushed through the glass doors, and walked in on a woman telling his child she wasn't fit to eat in the same line as everyone else. He stood still for 3 seconds. In a normal day, 3 seconds is nothing. In that doorway, it was long enough to feel every muscle in his back lock up, long enough to hear the blood in his own ears, long enough for a man to decide exactly who he was going to be for the next 5 minutes. He took in the room the way you do when you've spent your life being the one they expect to slip up. A line of students along the counter, 30 or so, most gone quiet, a few already lifting their phones. A tall kid in a track jacket near the front, halfway into a step toward Zora like he wanted to stand between her and the woman. Malik, her friend. She'd cut her eyes at him. The smallest shake of the head. Don't. 2 kitchen workers frozen at their stations, staring hard at the floor, the posture of people who'd watched this before and learned that speaking up only got you a worse schedule. And in the middle of it, holding an empty tray in both hands, his Zora. The girl who used to fall asleep against his shoulder during storms. The girl who read him her first research paper at the kitchen table, so nervous her voice broke on the long words. Marcus crossed the room. His shoes made no sound on the tile. He stopped an arm's length from the counter and set his hand on his daughter's shoulder, gently, the way you touch someone to tell them the alone part is over. Zora turned. Her eyes went wide. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Her voice cracked on the last word, not from nerves this time, from shame, the specific shame of being caught in the exact thing you've been hiding from the one person you'd do anything to protect. He didn't answer her. He looked at Diane Merrick instead. "Good afternoon," he said. "I'm her father. I'd like to understand what's happening." His voice was level. No heat in it. Just the flat, even tone of a man who has sat across from senators and utility commissioners and outlasted every one of them. And here is the moment the whole thing turned on. Diane Merrick could have looked at this man and seen a person. She could have said there'd been a mistake and handed the tray back, but she looked at him the same way she looked at his daughter. No tie, no entourage, no watch flashing off his wrist. She saw what she'd trained herself to see, and it was enough. "Sir," she said, lifting her chin, "visitors aren't allowed at the serving line. If there's a problem with your daughter's account, financial aid is upstairs. They open at 9. "I'm not here about her account," Marcus said. "I'm here about how you just spoke to my child." Merrick put both hands flat on the counter and leaned in. The lights buzzed over her head. "I don't care for your tone," she said, louder now, performing for the workers behind her, for the students, for anyone who might question her later. "We have systems here. Maybe where you come from, people walk in and demand whatever they want. This is Ellsworth. I have run this dining hall for 16 years. So collect your daughter and use the side door." Marcus didn't move. "I'd like your name and your title," he said. "I'm making a formal complaint." Her left eye twitched. One time. The first crack in it. "I don't owe you anything. Then I'd like your supervisor." She laughed, a short, dry sound. Sweetheart, I am the supervisor. 16 years. And in 16 years, nobody has stood in my hall and talked to me like this. Now I'll say it once more. Leave, or I'll have you removed. He held his ground. I'd like my daughter to receive the meal our family has paid for in full. Same counter, same food, same line as every other student in this room. Merrick stared at him. Then she reached under the counter and pressed a button, and a radio crackled, and she spoke into it with the fake calm of a person who has already decided who the villain is going to be. Security. This is Merrick in the main hall. I have an unauthorized man at the serving line, hostile, refusing to leave. I need someone now. She set the radio down and looked at him and smiled. Let's see how this goes for you. Stay with me here, because what security turns up when they start pulling records is the part nobody in that room saw coming. Subscribe so you don't lose the thread. The side door opened about 30 seconds later. Officer Paula Nash walked in, 9 years on campus security, and she'd never once put her hand on the taser at her hip. She read rooms for a living, and this one read wrong. Merrick was already coming toward her, low and fast. Walked right in. Aggressive. I feel unsafe. Might not even be the girl's father. Nash looked at Marcus, hands loose and visible at his sides. Sir, can I see some ID? He reached into his jacket slowly, the deliberate slowness a black man in this country learns without being taught, and handed over his license. Nash checked it, called it in. Came back clean. Not even a parking ticket. He's clear, she said, half to herself. That doesn't mean anything, Merrick cut in. Anybody can carry a card. Look at him. Does he look like he belongs at this school? I saw him reach over my counter. Check his bag. Nash's mouth tightened. But she turned to Marcus, apologetic, and said the thing Merrick wanted. Sir, would you mind if I looked in your bag? Every phone in the room was up now. Marcus looked at the officer, then at the red lights blinking from a dozen angles. No, he said. I don't consent to a search. There's no cause and no warrant. This is my property. Each word set down like a brick. Nash nodded, because legally there was nowhere for her to go. But Diane Merrick had never in 16 years lost to a man who looked like Marcus Bellamy, and she wasn't about to start. She came around the counter and pulled the bag right off his shoulder, hard enough that the strap dragged a red line across his neck. Zora shouted, "Don't touch him!" Nash said, "Diane, wait." Too late. Merrick had the bag on the counter and she ripped the zipper open and started slamming things down onto the steel for the whole room to watch. A laptop. A leather folder stamped in gold with the Meridian name, which she didn't read. A bound document she flipped through without seeing a single word. The cover said, Camille Bellamy Resilience Lab, Endowment Agreement, $9.5 million, and tossed aside like junk mail. And then a small brass harmonica, dented, worn soft at the edges from decades in a pocket. It rang against the steel counter when she dropped it. Marcus looked at it lying there between a napkin holder and a tub of plastic forks. It was Nia's. He had carried it every day for 31 years. The day his sister died, the day Zora was born, the day he buried Camille. He reached over and picked it up and put it back in his jacket. The only part of him that moved was his hand, and it was shaking. He said nothing. Malik Turner was still filming, his hands trembling and the camera somehow steady. 9 minutes of it by now, unbroken. 2 other students filmed from the side. The dining hall had turned into a room full of witnesses, and Diane Merrick didn't notice a single lens because she'd already moved on to the next thing. She planted herself between Marcus and Zora. Arms wide, palms flat on the steel, a wall of a woman between a father and his kid. I want everyone here to know, she announced, voice carrying to the back wall, that I am protecting the safety of this dining hall. I asked this man to leave. He refused. Then she turned on Zora, and her voice didn't soften. It sharpened. And you, sit down. The adults are handling this. You should be grateful this school lets you sit in here at all. Not every place would take people like you. Grateful. The word hung in the room like smoke, as if the seat were a favor, as if her scores and her published research and her family paying every dollar of tuition meant nothing next to the color of her hands. Zora didn't sit. She didn't cry. She stood there and something behind her eyes went quiet in a bad way. The quiet of a person who has just decided the world is never going to be fair, no matter how perfectly she behaves. Her roommate Hannah reached her and grabbed her arm. "This is insane," she whispered. At a corner table, an older man in a gray jacket set down his fork. Dr. Samuel Okafor had taught law at Ellsworth for 20 years and had watched the whole thing without a word. When Merrick said grateful, he stood, picked up his coffee, walked out through the faculty door, and made one phone call in the hallway. That call mattered. Not yet, but it did. A second officer had arrived, and Merrick stood in front of them both, ticking accusations off her fingers like a list she'd memorized years ago. Restricted area, hostile, refused a search. "I want him banned. Escort him out." Nash looked at the man standing still with his hands at his sides, then at the woman pacing and pointing and getting louder with every sentence, and made a call that had nothing to do with Merrick's word. "Mr. Bellamy," she said, "step into the hall with me while we sort this out." Marcus nodded once. He turned to his daughter and his voice went soft. "Eat your lunch, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong. Not one thing. I'll be back in 10 minutes. Then he took out his phone and sent 2 messages, fast and exact. The first to Vivian Marsh, Meridian's general counsel, in the building upstairs. "Freeze every agreement tied to Ellsworth. The lab, all of it. Now." The second to Dean Gregory Hale. "Come to the dining hall. Immediately." He slid the phone away and walked toward the hall with Officer Nash, and behind him, the room broke into whispers. Diane Merrick heard none of it. She was straightening her apron, turning to the youngest kitchen worker, a black girl who'd stared at the floor the whole time, and saying, loud enough to carry, "That's how you handle them. 16 years, never once failed." In the hallway, Nash walked beside Marcus in silence for a while. Then she stopped and lowered her voice. "Mr. Bellamy, between us. That was wrong. All of it. I knew it the second I walked in." He looked at her. How often does she do that? Nash looked at the floor for a long time. Then, "You're not the first person to ask me that." Footsteps. Zora had followed, Malik beside her, the phone still recording. Her voice came out small, not quiet from volume, quiet from how long she'd been carrying it. "Dad, I didn't tell you because I didn't want you thinking I couldn't handle it, but she does this every week. Not just to me, to Malik, to every black kid who uses the main line. She sends us to the Annex. She calls it flagged accounts," Malik said. "Says it's policy." "There's no policy, sir. We checked." Marcus looked at his daughter, and for the first time all day his eyes went red. Not from anger, from the specific pain a father feels finding out his child has been suffering in silence to keep him from worrying. He didn't say anything. He put his hand on her shoulder. Heavier this time, weighted with everything he wished he'd known weeks ago. The elevator chimed at the end of the hall. Dean Gregory Hale stepped out, same suit from the morning, his face the color of paper, his hand still holding the phone he'd read on the way down. He looked at Marcus, the man he'd called our most important partner 3 hours earlier, and understood the floor under his career had just split open. "What happened?" he said. "Somebody tell me what happened." Nash told him. Short, flat, factual. A manager denied a student her meal. The father stepped in. The manager called security, accused him of trespassing, and pulled his bag off his shoulder in front of the whole hall. The father cooperated. The manager did not. Hale's face went gray, one shade at a time. "Mr. Bellamy," he started, "whatever happened in there is not who we are as a university." "You shook my hand this morning," Marcus said. "You called me your most important partner. You showed me a building that was going to carry my dead wife's name. And while you were pouring me coffee, your employee was downstairs telling my daughter she should be grateful you let her eat." Hale opened his mouth. "I didn't know," he whispered. "That's the problem," Marcus said. "You didn't know, or you didn't look." He let it sit. Then, "Here's what's going to happen. You and I are walking back into that dining hall together. You're going to say what happened in front of the same students who watched it, and your manager leaves this campus today. Not next week. Not after a review. Today." Hale started to suggest they handle it privately. HR, legal, a scheduled meeting. Marcus cut him off without raising his voice. She handled it publicly. She humiliated my daughter in front of 300 people. So no, we're not fixing this in a quiet room. They walked back. Marcus first, Hale half a step behind, Zora and Malik and Nash trailing. The hall was still full. Nobody had left. Trays untouched. The place smelling like cold food and nerves. Merrick was behind the counter wiping down a station, humming, relaxed. A woman who thought the problem had been solved and the order of things restored. Then the door opened and the room went dead silent. She looked up, saw the dean, started to smile. Then she saw Marcus behind him, walking back into the room she'd thrown him out of, and the smile came apart in pieces. "Mrs. Merrick," Hale said, and his voice shook, but it carried. "This is Marcus Bellamy. He's the father of Zora Bellamy, a student here who pays full tuition. He is the founder and chief executive of Meridian Grid Technologies, a company worth over $5 billion. His foundation was funding a research lab on this campus, and his company is the leading bid for the food service contract that pays your salary. He let each fact land in the silence like a stone dropped in still water. You will apologize to Mr. Bellamy and to his daughter, and then you will come to my office, where you are suspended, effective this minute, pending a full investigation." Every phone in the hall was up. Merrick grabbed the edge of the counter, her knuckles white. Her mouth opened and closed and opened again, and nothing came out. Marcus stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You want to know the part that gets me," he said. "If you'd just been decent to her, not because of who I am, you didn't know who I am. Just because she was a person standing in your line, you'd still have your job tonight. You'd still have your contract. You had all of it. And you looked at my daughter and decided she wasn't worth basic kindness." The hall was so quiet you could hear the vents turning 3 floors up. "Mr. Bellamy," Merrick finally managed, cracked and thin. "I had no idea who you were. If I'd known—" "That's the whole problem," he said, cutting through her. "You shouldn't have to know who I am to treat my daughter like a human being. A hot meal isn't a prize you hand out to people once you've decided they're worth your time." A professor 2 tables away covered her mouth. Somewhere in the back, a student started to clap and stopped, unsure. Merrick tried again, tears now, real or rehearsed, 16 years having blurred the line. "I was doing my job. Ask anyone. I care about these kids." Zora stepped forward. She didn't shout. She spoke the way a person speaks when they've been holding something for months and have finally decided to set it down. "There's no policy that sorts students by line. I checked in my second week. I asked Student Affairs for the dining handbook. There's no main line and no annex. You invented it, and you used it on every black student who walked through that door." The room made a sound then. Not applause, gasps, whispers. A couple of voices saying yes out loud. Merrick looked around for one person who'd meet her eyes. The kitchen staff looked at the floor. Nash looked away. She had run out of allies 16 years too late to notice. Hale read the suspension from a paper in his jacket, steadier now that he had something official to hide behind. Merrick untied her apron with shaking hands, folded it, and set it on the counter the way you fold something at a funeral. Then she walked toward the side door, past 5 kitchen workers who'd spent years under her and watched her sort students and said nothing because she controlled their shifts. Not one looked up. A student near the door said it loud enough for the room to hear. 16 years too long. The door shut behind her. Marcus walked around the counter. Nobody stopped him. He took a clean tray, moved down the line, put food on it himself. Chicken, rice, vegetables, a carton of milk. Carried it to where his daughter stood and set it in front of her. "Eat, sweetheart," he said. "You earned this seat every single day you've been here." Zora looked at the tray, then at her father, and she sat down and she ate. Then he turned to the room. 300 students, dozens of phones, total silence. "If anyone in here has ever been made to feel the way my daughter was made to feel today, I need you to hear me. It was never you. It was never about anything you did, and it is not going to keep happening here." 1 person clapped. Then 5. Then the whole hall was on its feet. and the sound was rough and uneven. The sound of something a lot of people had been holding down for a long time. By 2 o'clock, Vivian Marsh had a forensic team and a court order in the dean's office. Her people pulled 3 years of card scan logs, the door badge data, and the shared inbox where student complaints landed, and a kitchen worker named Ellis, a quiet man who'd kept his head down for years, handed over a spiral notebook he'd been filling in secret. Dates, names, the same instruction from Merrick over and over. Send those two to the Annex. What they found made even Marcus go quiet. Over 3 years, Merrick had flagged the accounts of 31 Black and Latino students as unverified, so the scanner would reject their card and route them to the back. Not one white student had ever been flagged. 19 complaints had come in. Most were marked reviewed and buried. 2 students had transferred out citing the dining hall, and nobody had asked why. Zora's card had been flagged on her 3rd day. That night, Malik uploaded his 9 minutes with no caption. It didn't need one. Inside 3 days, it passed 30 million views. A woman in an apron pointing a gloved finger at a girl and telling her to eat in the back. A woman named Denise Pruitt watched it in Macon and felt her stomach turn because she'd seen that finger before. 2 years earlier, the same manager had accused her daughter Simone of using a fake ID at the register. It was Simone's own card, but there was a report, and it went in her file, and Simone left the school at the end of that year and never told the whole story until her mother saw the video and asked. Denise called Marsh the next morning. Within a week, 6 more families came forward, and the foundation in Camille's name paid for every lawyer. Marcus gave the press one line. This was never about my daughter. It's about every kid who was made to feel small in a room where they belonged. A reporter at the Savannah Ledger ran a 3-part series called The Annex, 16 years of complaints and cover-ups. Applications to Ellsworth fell 18% in 2 weeks. Donors pulled pledges. Gregory Hale resigned inside the month, a 2-line email at 11 on a Sunday night, gone by Monday. The board named an interim president, Dr. Grace Okonkwo, who'd spent 30 years working on fairness in schools. Her first act was a full outside audit. Her second was to eat a tray of the same food at a table by the window where everyone could see her. The Georgia Attorney General opened a civil rights case. Merrick was charged with assault for pulling the bag off Marcus's shoulder and unlawful restraint for blocking Zora's line, with an enhancement for the 3-year pattern. The suit for the 12 families settled for $12.4 million. A separate judgment of $610,000 landed on Merrick herself. At trial, she said she didn't see color, only behavior. The prosecution put the scan logs on a screen, read Ellis's notebook into the record, and played Malik's 9 minutes in full while nobody in the room moved. Guilty in under 3 hours. Before he closed, the judge looked at her and said what she did was not policy. It was cruelty, and it lasted as long as it did because an institution found it easier to look away. In the gallery, Denise Pruitt held her daughter's hand and said quietly, 2 years too late. 6 months on, the dining hall didn't look like the same place. Student photos on the walls, a banner by the door that read, "Every seat here is yours." A new kitchen team under a director named Rosa Delgado, who started a program called Neighbor's Table, 1 lunch a month where parents ate beside their kids. Dr. Okonkwo, now permanent president, rewrote the staff handbook herself. Zora started something of her own, the welcome line, pairing new students, especially the first in their families to go to college, with older ones who showed them how everything worked, down to how you file a complaint and make sure it doesn't get buried. 60 mentors by the end of the semester. The lab got finished on new terms, $24 million now, and 50 full scholarships for kids out of the Savannah and Macon public schools, named for Camille. Simone Pruitt reapplied and got in. On her first day back, Zora met her at the door with a mentor badge and a tray already waiting by the window. Malik became president of the Black Student Union. His 9 minutes passed 40 million views. He never took it down. On a Thursday in October, Marcus stood at the back of the hall. Same room, same tile, same lights. Everything else different. Zora sat in the middle of it, surrounded by friends of every shade, arguing about a problem set and laughing so hard one of them knocked over a juice, which she wiped up without breaking her sentence. Rosa Delgado came over. "Care to get in line for Neighbor's Table, Mr. Bellamy?" Chicken today. He picked up a tray and stood in line like every other parent. He could have done 100 easier things back in the spring, written a check and walked out, pulled Zora and sent her somewhere else. Instead, he kept coming back, Thursday after Thursday, because a place doesn't change from money or headlines. It changes because someone keeps showing up. Here's the thing I keep landing on. A person shouldn't have to prove their worth basic decency. Zora didn't need the right last name to deserve a hot meal. Nobody does. And the Diane Merricks of the world don't last 16 years because they're powerful. They last because everyone around them stays quiet. The workers who look at the floor, the officers who follow the loud voice instead of the facts, the administrators who bury the complaint because reading it would mean doing something about it. The whole thing holds together on silence, and it falls apart the moment one person refuses to give it. You don't need a $5 billion company to stop a Diane Merrick. You need a phone, a witness, and the nerve to say that's not okay, out loud, in the room where it's happening. So let me ask you, if you'd walked into that hall as a stranger and heard what Marcus heard, what would you have done? Would you have stepped up, pulled out your phone, said something? Or would you have told yourself it wasn't your business? Be honest in the comments. I read them. And if this one landed somewhere real for you, hit like, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe, because there's always another Diane Merrick out there. The only question is who's standing in the doorway when she starts.